No, but they didn't mark them, so we don't know last time. So we didn't open it for public hearing on that one?
Item 3.4.
Oh, we probably just, because we said we're tabling it, we're tabling this one, so.
So just make sure you do have that.
Public hearing for sure. I was just assuming I need to open it for public hearing for everything anyway, or because we already had a public hearing.
You technically don't have to, but you can.
Well, I know we have one to speak this time.
Yeah.
So,
We normally we do stop it.
so normally you don't, if we table it, you don't open it again?
No, normally you do.
Okay, that's what I thought. I should be okay. I did have another reaction at the State Relief Society thing that we were living, everyone was eating the tables around the church. And then I had to sing, that was, you know, those songs. Being that we're, you know, and patiently. Yeah.
You want you did a break dance?
That's interesting. So modern. Yeah, we've got corn and we need to get started. Yeah, we have corn. Yeah.
You said.
I just said we have corn.
Quorum.
Quorum.
Sound like four.
The acoustics in this room.
We had corn.
So do we have?
We had corn bust.
I was waiting to.
Tina, welcome. Good, how are you? Good to see you.
So we're Kevin Jerry.
I do. I threw it in the fridge. I don't even know what it is.
She's like, you're just gonna smell it.
You tell us. I can't.
I don't like it. I have a teenage son still at home. Here's nothing.
Trying hard.
We just write the laws as we go along.
Depends on the day
She told us like this.
History or whatever.
It's me.
As soon as we have, okay. Good, then let's start our meeting. Okay.
First item on the agenda is 3.1, Hernandez Plat A. It's a request to extend the approval of the plat for 1 year. So they came last September and got approval, and so they're just requesting an extension. Here's the location. It's in the R7.5 zone. They are splitting one lot into 2 lots. An existing home on lot 1 will remain. Lot 1 is 7,510 square feet, and lot 2 is 18,618 square feet. Here's a street view. And it still meets all the requirements, so staff recommends you approve the extension. Any questions?
This is our first appeal, so it's just a straight up, do we approve or not approve, correct?
The ordinance does allow you to extend it for a year. But not another year. You can do it every year, but it has to, they have to make an application every year to extend it. So on occasion, some developers or homeowners decide to do the improvements themselves. So they'll choose not to record the plat, so they don't have to post a bond. To record the plat, we're gonna require that amount upfront in the bond. Sometimes they'd rather just do it over the year, and then once that's done, we inspect it, it's approved. Then we can record the plat without having to post a bond. So that's, I think the reason here is they just haven't got finished that, and they need another year. If they let it lapse, they'll have to pay the full fee and come back through the process.
Why would we even deny them then? What would even be the cost?
There might be some issues if it's a multiple year extension and the laws change or requirements change, then we would probably recommend no, because they would need to comply with the new standards. But in this instance, there's no changes to it. That's just another year, and so I think we're comfortable. So yeah, you're right, this is the first time, but it's once or twice a year we'll get something like this.
Just so you know, they're selling property outside the country and it's taking longer than they thought. So they're expecting to have that money before the end of this year, but they just couldn't have it by September when their other expired. So this one shouldn't go more than 1 year.
Thank you. Any other questions about that? Okay, item 3.2.
Okay, this is an application from business licensing to create new SLU code and a new section to govern residential preschools. So this would help them. So there are some differences between residential daycare and residential preschools. Currently, all the preschools are being filed under daycares. So this would just help them be a bit more organized and with enforcement. Did you have any questions on the proposed text?
I don't have any questions on the text. I do have a neighbor who runs it, I guess, I don't know if it's how do you know if it's a daycare or like or a preschool or what's it?
So daycares are usually all day thing. There's
it is.
different age group.
Okay.
Preschools may just be for a couple hours a day. They do a section in the morning, a section in the afternoon.
Now, typically, the business license, know which one they're doing, so if they're running a preschool, the license says preschool. This just helps them then distinguish if it's a preschool or a license for a preschool,
What,
and not lumped under a preschool.
what initiated this request? Why did this all of a sudden come up with that?
They have been going through and looking at their land use codes.
They being,
They saw a need to create
they being our,
Business license.
business sites.
okay. Well, people
Yeah.
thought that needed to be cleaned up.
It just helps them clarify or distinguish between the two.
So makes sense.
That's what the new SLU code will look like. And staff recommend we consider recommendation. Any other questions?
Will this affect any existing preschools? Are we aware of the impact that it might
It
have?
will, because pretty much the same standards in a preschool are now just separated into a separate daycare versus preschool, so there's not gonna be any new requirements. So any new ones coming in will just be now under this SLU code. They'll probably go back and change them to the correct SLU code because they were under a different. Just make sure that they're compliant that way, not making them do any other changes.
So the old ones will all be grandfathered into the old code. Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, item 3.3 is a request from Development Services to amend some sections of residential and commercial daycares pertaining to outdoor play areas. So in the residential section, this would require outdoor play areas to have self-closing and self-latching gates, and it should be a soft surface play area. For commercial daycares, we're proposing adding a section that would require play areas to have self-closing, self-latching gates. It has to be a soft surface area and it cannot be in parking lots. Any questions about that?
Did this impact the daycare overall of Center and Eighth, no, Fourth?
So just new ones going forward.
Just new one going forward.
So that one actually complies with the soft surface play areas. We had one recently, we kind of started this down where her diamonds or jewelry store is. Behind that, there was a daycare that went in that building. They kind of created a play area as part of the asphalt. And so that, there was really nothing for us to stop it. So we wanted to bring this forward and say, you're fine having a commercial daycare, but please have enough grass or not in a hard, 100-degree surface. Kids are under time. So that was the reason for
Yeah,
this.
that's really.
Now, that's gonna be, legal non-conforming if it ever moves or relocates, they don't have to meet this compliance. You're not gonna make them go in the bedroom. If anything going forward, would have to have an actual soft surface, not within an asphalt parking. So that's the reason why this one's coming.
Any other questions? Okay. Item 3.4, so this was continued from last time. So some of this will be repeated information. It's a request to rezone a portion of the business park zone to PD 51 at approximately 720 north, 1550 east. Just a quick note, this map on the, I don't know if that's the left or right. That shows the circle where all the property owners were notified. That's where the city sent postcards to, and it's 1,500 feet with the property.
So what's the regulation as to how many feet?
It's required 1,000 feet.
But we went beyond that.
We went beyond that because there's not many property owners in that area.
So where does Matt Heap's property, where is,
Right next to it.
was it within the 1,500?
We verified that they did receive, that company received 3 different proposals.
And that is in the packet. I have a printout if any of you are interested in seeing the labels we sent them to.
So did he just not check his mail or what? He missed it in the mail?
So I mean, I feel like he's here. I was just curious, I just asked when they're talking about
We
you, the third
received it
person.
for, you want me to answer? We received for the council meeting next week, but not for the planning commission, and we received virtually no information of any kind. So, you know, to say, hey, we have a council meeting and you can come and comment, but you can't actually comment on any data, just gave you no data.
That notice was the planning commission notice and the city council notice. And there was a QR code on there that would have directed you to all the information,
Yeah,
as well as a contact to come into the city and talk to us. So we're not gonna provide details out in, you know, without you making contact for us or going through the QR code. That's our method.
I do have a picture of both sides of what I received. It has the city council one and then for next week, but really no other information beyond that.
I'd have to look at it.
And then the QR code directs you to the site that essentially says the same thing. It's not a problem about getting the information for next week. It's just, you can't, there's no actionable data, no access to the same information that you got about the project. That's my concern.
But, you know, I'll let you know. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
We had a public hearing last time.
We did have a public hearing last
Do
time.
we have
Yeah.
do you have a
This
public
is-
hearing again or not?
So I'm just for verification, this
Yes.
is not what you received,
No, that,
because we get the same thing on the same
Yeah.
levels as you do, so.
yeah, that looks correct, yes.
Yeah, so that was the planning commission meeting, and that's the city council, and those are the ordinances we're facing, and yes, I agree, that takes you to the same information. But that's where it is, I'm just saying that's what was set up.
Yes.
I came just to see what was happening north of my property, and I'm actually in that red circle with my building, and I don't know the notice.
Okay.
I don't think this is 10,000 feet, but, or 500 feet.
So Jason, this is different than a public meeting, if you want the rezoning that would be held.
Different than a public meeting, this
Is
is a public.
this different than the neighbors, you know, meeting with the neighbors in a certain geographical area of?
We require both, right? The applicant has to hold a neighborhood meeting, and then we send out notices for the 2 public hearings that we hold, planning commission, city council, so there's 2 different notices.
So the applicant should have neighborhood meetings to talk to people in the neighborhood about it.
And he did.
Well, they had it November of 2021, and that was also in your packet.
They did it in November. So they only had like
They made
just a
their
handful
application.
of people, like 6 people showed up for that meeting.
Yeah, the application that we took it was for the meeting for December 6th, I think, or December 2nd, so they had their neighborhood meeting in November before that application. Yes.
So were you guys notified of the November meeting?
I don't recall receiving anything or being told by any of my employees of that. So you can speak to whether or not something was mailed, but I did not know about anything until that last mailer. And then, so I know again about the meeting next week. I had no previous,
But we just established that the notice had the planning commission meeting on.
excuse me,
We just agreed that that notice was what you received, and that had the planning commission date on.
it does. My request is to have some information, because I'm going to a meeting that I can't ask any questions about because I have no data of any kind.
But you're welcome to, I mean, there's a phone number on there, there's an email on there as well, so you could have called, we could have definitely sent you some information, I guess that email doesn't supply the information.
Yes,
There's
and I
methods
have
on there
made,
that you can get the information.
So many requests, that's why Terry has me here today. That's what I'm trying to do now.
So when you got the notice, why didn't you call us and get more information?
I have called and asked, I called every member on the city council, I tried.
Well, the city council doesn't have that information, because we haven't given it to them yet. It's the city staff that has the information.
I understand, I have made requests and I'm happy to get that now, but I'm sorry, I don't know the appropriate people. Nor was it really
It's on the postcard.
mentioned.
Okay.
What was?
My name, phone number, and email address.
Well, we'd be glad to provide any of that information to you.
Yeah, please.
That's the key, I think, that he's got how big your building? 30,000 square feet?
No, almost 90,000 square.
90,000 square foot building, we probably want to make sure he's understands what's going to happen, or what is proposed to happen.
No, that's not a problem. We notice every project in the same manner, and that's the procedure that we follow, so it's hard because a lot of people don't see it in the mail, and it happens, right? It's just the procedure that we go through, so we'll get you the information.
And as we continue on, we're gonna go over some of that information right now.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
So here is the concept plan. It shows 25 units are proposed in Orem. Here is the existing plat. Here's the proposed plat. This will be finalized when they come back for the site plan. So if they get rezoned, they'll come back for the site plan and the proposed plat will be a part of that application. So the existing zoning, it's the BP, which is a business park zone. Here's the proposed zoning map to create a new PD 51 zone.
Which for clarification is currently allowed under our city ordinances.
Yes.
Yes.
A PD zone.
A PD zone within a business park.
As opposed to it at the.
Yes.
To create a PD zone, you have to have at least 3 acres. And in order for residential to be a component of the PD zone, it needs to be more than 500 feet away from 800 North State Street, so it meets all of those. Traffic circulation plan.
And those are the new roads that are being proposed to be built.
So you've not seen this information at all, right? That we're seeing now.
I've been able to obtain some, I have this now in the last 48 hours. I've been able to see the problem last night.
Here are the proposed elevations in Orem. The total height is 36'9". Here is the proposed text of the PD 51 zone. Did you guys have any questions up to this point?
If I could add Cheryl to, is it Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
To maybe help calm the situation a little bit, what happens to a planning commission is not a final ruling, that is done with the city council. So tonight will just be a positive recommendation, a negative recommendation, or maybe not a recommendation at all. And the city council will be the ones that make the decision on if the rezone takes place or not. So there's still time to digest information.
Just FYI, it's not going to be on next week just because of the planning commission continued, so it'll be on a different date. We'll send out new notes.
Oh, it's not next week.
It's not going to be on.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
I have a question. Are both Provo and Orem serving the two separate pieces of the utilities? So Provo's gonna do utilities and Orem, there's not a utility sharing agreement?
Correct. Yes.
Separate.
Yeah, and is that standard, or I know down south they did.
It is, there are places, and Sam can maybe speak to this better, but there are places in Orem that serve Provo and some places in Provo serve Orem, but those residents, unfortunately, they double fees when that happens. So you don't want to live somewhere that you're not provided services by the city, or is that correct, Sam? We did have discussions with him about possibly doing this here, but I believe the developer wasn't, they were interested in that.
Looks like, oh, Sam, you are correct. It looks like they can do set systems without having much difficulty moving back, connecting back into the water. Things like
Right, there's already, currently there's a lift station that services your building down in the area. And it's been sized to handle that additional capacity, so, and again, this is just a rezone. When we get into the site plan, we'll address all of the utility issues, the water, the sewer, the storm drain, and traffic as well.
And then last time it was mentioned to continue it to see what the Provo Planning Commission did. And so they saw 4 items, and for each item, they recommended approval with the condition that a development agreement must be signed. And they had a city council meeting last night, and it was continued at that meeting until October 4th. Any questions about
Did
Provo?
they cite the reasons for the continuance?
Yes, it was to allow residents more time. It was a request by some neighbors.
Sorry, it was continued to when?
October 4th. Any questions about Provo or five?
And that's for their city council.
City council. So the planning commission recommended approval with conditions. Here is the street view. And staff recommends that you consider recommendation or to the city council.
What would that development agreement change, or doesn't the development agreement just codify what's there?
So I think one of the comments that the council wanted was that the sidewalk next to the river to be a public access. And that's what Provo wanted, that area to be public access. So that's one of the things they wanted to get in a development agreement, because they can't require it by ordinance. So that's the development agreement then would allow them to then enforce that be open and maintained for not only those who live there, but any public who want to walk down. So that was the one comment I had.
There is a comment concerning open space as well in the development agreement.
So you can see they have some good river frontage along there. They want to be able to keep that open.
Does Orem ever use development agreements or?
We do all the time.
All the time.
It's more of a proffer by the developer, so it's not, the city doesn't require it. But if there's certain things that say the council will approve, certain, the developer could proffer, hey, we'll do this, and they do that by development agreement, so then we can then enforce that because there is an agreement.
Any other questions about this project?
I have a question, a general question. If I look at the city maps correctly, there are only 2 areas in the entire city going for business park. This one and UVU.
Correct.
By making this decision, do we decide we don't need any more research, development, and training?
There's 2 zones that are zone BP, but there are other zones, the commercial zone, there's a commercial zone, there's PV zones, and other zones that allow for business parks. These are just unique designs that were developed. University obviously is its own. This one's designed for a business park itself, but there are other zones that allow business parks if somebody wanted to come in. So there's other properties available. This is just one mechanism, one zone that allows for.
So Madam, can you talk
I
about
do have
this?
a question about next year. They being the only one in the park.
Sounds like he's here to address that tonight. Right, you're with Nexio?
I'm not with Nexio, but I own the building,
On the bill.
and then I have my own, businesses in that park and others,
But you can speak for the property.
Yes.
You are the property.
for sure.
So UDOT, I mean, where are we as far as their involvement?
Sam, Stanley speaks.
UDOT will be involved once we go through the site plan process. They submit their traffic impact study. I think you guys received a copy of the
Yeah, we saw
the
this.
study from Avenue that was done in 2015. So with this project, if and when, if it gets approved, they go through the site plan process, that's when they will submit their traffic impact study. Likely they could possibly do an update to this one with more current numbers. If you read that, there were 3 separate types of solutions that were recommended in there. And I would think that that would probably be a direction that you would head down. But again, this is just for a rezone, saying, hey, we're okay with doing this in this area. And then once that happens, then when they go through the site plan approval process, we'll get into the details, we'll start looking at the data, we'll start looking at the numbers and those requirements. So the other thing we gotta realize too is with all this happening, when we do that impact, we'll likely also include not just Nexio or those businesses there, but across the street, the Mama Choose and those pit stops will be an impactful mitigation that will happen in the area. So UDOT's aware, no, they're not supportive of a signal because of all the constraints, but they are supportive of some of the other mitigation items.
Thank you.
So it sounds safe to say that one of those solutions or something like that will happen on these.
One of these 3, yes.
So given this property is 500 feet south of Acre North,
It's
Okay.
about 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet, could we put restrictions that would require or? I don't know how
So
I-
the zone doesn't creep closer, is that what you're talking
No, no,
Are you
no.
talking about the intersection?
So yeah, when I got the intersection, can we actually only recommend approval if UDOT makes improvements? That's what I'm asking.
Make it conditional?
Yeah, could we make a conditional approval? That's one of my questions.
I guess part of it, and Aaron may correct me, you could recommend that the council do that, and then they could do a development agreement or something like that, to include something like that. It would be more of a recommendation on your, and the city council would be the ones that ultimately make that decision. And if the developer decides, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll proffer a development agreement, then Aaron and his office will develop that, and that would actually be signed before it ever got to the council. The council then could potentially rezone it, knowing that that development agreement's been signed. They won't rezone a property if the development agreement hasn't been signed, if one's needed or recommended, because once you rezone a property, you can't really get a development agreement.
How many owners own property north of this property in Orem? Do you know how many property owners there are?
So this property owner, sorry, Richard. So this property owner owns these, and then this gentleman owns both these, correct? Well, this building is here.
Yes, those 2 lots.
So these 2 lots, and then this property is owned by the same, and then this across the river is owned by different.
Were you asking north of 8th North?
No.
South of 8th.
And has
So
the,
there's really only 2 property owners we're dealing with here. The ones who own this development are the 3. Is there a third one?
Across the river.
But that's across the river, is that in Provo or is that in?
So this is Orem.
That's Orem.
The boundary is right here. So this development was approved is right here. And then what they're proposing is here, and then they own this property. And
And Rocky Mountain Power owns a portion too, so there's one more. other
so the substation will stay?
Correct, yeah,
Substation's here, sorry, that's.
and I think they own north of the road too, correct?
And then the city does own a detention basin, right?
Have we heard from the property owner on the east side?
We have as far as what she wants to do for her property, but nothing in regards to this project.
Doesn't necessarily affect her directly, other than if it is approved, I imagine she'll do something potentially similar. She is redeveloping, the lady who owns the property is redeveloping the old, I think it's the University Press or something.
Red shop.
Oh,
It's right here, she owns that as well, and that's what's under redevelopment right now. She also owns the one on the left, so she eventually is gonna do that and then move potentially more to do something.
any discussion we want to have now, or move on to the next item? We're good. Okay. Thanks, David.
Okay, item 3.5 is a request to amend a portion of the business park zone and the SLU code. So they want to allow to have fast food in the business park zone. And then the other change would allow them to not match the existing business park that's there, but be consistent within their own development.
So with the clarification, this is separate from the PD. zone,
Right.
But this is the remaining BPs, just so you can make a distinction between those.
Any questions about that?
Yeah, we can, and the recommendation to the city council. We can up one and down one.
What was your question? I didn't.
I say, well, what if we like part of that, the other part we don't like, right? So can we go part yes and part no?
Yeah. Recommendation to the council. Way to do that.
How do you get in and out of that? Will that be
Oh,
off
it's the
of
same
Main,
thing.
Main North?
Yeah, it's the same thing, it's all part of the same.
It's all, so it's gonna be in the corner, is it right next to the power plant?
No, it'll be just above where the residential is and next to,
Go back here.
So-
Gentlemen's middle.
So it's right next to the town.
Apply it to the-
yeah, next to townhouse, and next to the
This one?
Okay.
existing.
Yeah.
building.
So the
Text.
the text amendment would apply to this area, the BP right there.
Actually,
It's a whole
it's gonna
whole
apply to all, but even to his property, he can choose to put in a restaurant with a drive-through, not necessarily fast food, but they're asking for a drive-through.
I mean, they can tell these properties, so I'm assuming that's what they want. You know, you could redevelop your property, or this lady could do the same type of thing, so it opens that whole zone up to fast.
Any other questions?
If I could just clarify, we as staff, we receive these requests, we don't necessarily, we're not for or against this project. We help the applicant get to a point where they can bring it to you, and it's up to you if you wanna, you think it's best for the city. So that's what you get to do tonight, is decide whether you like it and you think it's good for the city or you don't, and give that recommendation. But we as staff, we're not pushing a project one way or the other, especially on this one. We're just functioning to be the processors and bring this information to you. So just wanted to kind of clarify that.
No, it says their staff recommends to the planning commission, let's see, the planning commission and recommendation to the city to amend.
So consider a recommendation, whether it's positive or negative.
Okay,
The city council can do what they want.
you're putting that burden on us. then, is what you're doing.
I mean, we in the past have given,
Yeah.
we have given a positive recommendation.
Yes,
So usually if it's positive, it means that they've met the code, they've
Okay.
met all the intent of what needs to be done. But sometimes that gets misconstrued that we are pushing a project or we,
okay,
there have been times in the past we've given a negative recommendation because one example was an apartment project and economic development felt that that apartment project shouldn't happen and it should be an office development down the road. And in that case, the council actually approved the apartment complex, went against that. So we're kind of dialing back our recommendations a little bit because I think they're getting misconstrued is that we are pushing products.
so your recommendation does is that we consider this then as well.
Correct.
Correct.
So if you think that it's good to have fast food in this
Okay,
zone, then
I'm glad you made that
we
clear.
will let you. So, yeah, if you think it's best for the city or not.
Even though it's been
Is that-
said. Oh, go ahead.
Is economic development aware of this? Because this was the district we were gonna put as a tourism district, right? So have they been made aware of this development?
They are, and so one of the challenges with this area down there is this piece of property in particular, they're looking to put townhomes on. I mean, it's been sitting for a very long time, and there's been a number of proposals and nothing's happened, right? So when nothing happens, then the market starts, players get involved and they start looking at, you know, what can I do with it? And then you start getting lots of housing requests, because housing is very easy to make pencil and make work. So, you know, some cities, and we've met with, and not this project, but for example, back when we were working on some economic plans, we met with other cities. And they always said, well, it's okay to wait till you get what you want, right? Now, I'm not here to tell you that tonight, that you should do that or not, but market pressures come and market pressures go, and options come and options go, and it's been vacant for a long time. So that's usually when housing comes in and people have to do housing. So.
I guess to clarify one thing too, are residential rentals allowed in the zone currently as it's been stated? in the BP zone, like if we don't do this, because Jim Ivory has stated that short-term rentals are allowed.
Yes, because, well, if they did what they're proposing for their phase 2, which is an Airbnb type enclave, that would be considered a hospitality use, and hotels are allowed, so hospitality is allowed. So that is how staff and legal would look at it. Now, if I want to clarify, that is completely separate of what's being proposed today. This is strictly residential housing. For that, for lease, long-term housing. Any short-term housing, that's in their future phase, it would be part of their site plan. So that's not on the table tonight. So I think there might have been some confusion that these townhomes were short-term rentals. That's not what they're taking. And I guess, Marie, your question, that the idea of those would be to capture that tourism type use in the mouth of the canyon. Create a really nice kind of hotelish experience, but in a different format than a standard hotel. Is kind of what
Airbnb is my friend.
Of tourism at the mouth of the canyon, just there at the trailhead, is there like any potential plans to put bathrooms in or anything to sort of?
Not that we have. That trailhead's controlled by Utah County, and it's actually on, is it Central Utah Water Conservancy District property? So they have a joint use agreement on that. The gas station there, I think people probably utilize that,
They
but
probably love that.
they get a lot of foot traffic, and then I think they lease out the spot where people rent bikes and things. But I mean, there's definitely a market down there for those types of services.
And we indirectly, because we have a park that borders it and further up you go, that we service it with the restrooms there too.
Timpanogos?
So,
Is that-
Yeah.
So.
Next item.
Next item, I'm switching over.
Okay, item 3.6 is a public hearing, and this is addressing our general plan housing strategies to meet new state statute. So it's amending portions of chapter 4, which is housing chapter of the general plan, including updating section 4.1 population demographics, section 4.2 existing conditions, and enacting section 4.4.2 pertaining to moderate income housing strategies. And just comments before we move through what we're amending and enacting. Staff has met with council members and they're comfortable with what we're proposing and moving forward with we will present today.
And you said this is to be in compliance with the state.
Correct. And if there's any questions about that, I do have some slides that kind of goes through some of those changes. We're going to start with specifically what we're amending in the general plan. And so amending.
Grant, could you kind of give a little general plan background as to what it is and just training for those that are new?
Yeah, so the state law, by state statute, every community is required to have a general plan to plan for the future, plan for housing, economic growth, protecting environment, et cetera. And so this year, and this started in 2019, but this year they amended state statute to try to help communities address the housing crisis and have communities adopt strategies to hopefully help develop more housing and provide more housing to Utahns who want to stay in Utah and live here. So that law created this menu of options where we pick from those and adopt those formally as part of our general plan. Before in 2019, it wasn't required to have them adopt as part of our general plan, just to report on which ones we were choosing and moving forward with some goals. But that's changed this year with this legislation. So
they've got some financial strings attached to these.
correct. So there's some restrictions and incentives as to if we meet the deadline, which is October 1st, next Saturday. And so the amendments are supposed to be done by October 1st, as well as a report that I will be reporting some demographic and housing data on Orem's current status of housing to the state. And they're gathering all that information to then review and kind of do a broad moderate income housing assessment for the whole state. Additionally, the state code defines moderate income housing as 80% area median income. And so it is, and that's measured at the county level. And so Orem would kind of be going off of the AMI for Utah County. And I have that information, like I said, not to get into too much of that, but that's kind of a brief overview of what the legislation is, why it's required as part of our general plan, what the general plan requires. And so amending section 4.1, our previous general plan numbers were pre-2020 census data. And so it's kind of American Community Survey, ACS data of 2018. And so we've gone in while we have this opportunity to amend this chapter and updated some of these numbers with 2020 data or 2020, more of the most recent available data. And so that's what you see here, population and age, so 2010 to 2020 versus 2010 to 2018, which is the numbers were before. And so that we're amending this section with this wording. Additionally, these charts that show the existing data, so replacing that data with the current census data, as well as projections of average annual growth. You can see there. And then we've kind of broken that down by, as you see, Utah, Orem, Utah County, Utah State, and the United States. So you can kind of see some comparisons there, how we're growing locally, how we're growing county-wise, how we're growing state, how we're growing nationwide, how we compare to those. So it is also broken down by population and households. So that's interesting to look at as well. Additionally, in 4.1, there is a population by age chart, shows population by age. And that, again, that changed from the 2018 data to the 2020 census data. And at this level, the existing chart only had Orem and Utah County. And so I did have this other chart, the intention, future intention is we have a 2018 moderate income housing study that we did with that existing data at the time. We're waiting for a finer grained batch of data at the local micro level, at the smallest demographic level that the census has, to update demographic data across the whole city. We did that previously through our neighborhood plans. And so once that data is released, which is projected to be the end of this year, next year, we're going to be going through that process to update that moderate income housing study, and as well as the neighborhood plans. And so that's one of the reasons why we struck this out, just until we have the time to get that new data, we can do a finer grained analysis. You're also amending section 4.2, existing conditions. It listed 4.2.5 State Street mixed-use districts. Those were recently this year rezoned back to C2. So we're removing that section. We're enacting section 4.4.2, moderate income housing strategies. And this is just a high level kind of, these are the 4 strategies that we're moving forward with adopting. One of them is E, it's from that menu in the state code, so it kind of goes A through X. E, which is create or allow for reduce regulations relating to internal or detached accessory dwelling units in residential zones. X, demonstrate implementation of any of the program or strategy to address the housing needs of residents who earn less than 80% of the area median income. That's the specific program that we have. It's the zone, affordable senior housing overlay zone. It requires new units in that to be income restricted for that area median income. It's reviewed annually. They have to report compliance. Create a housing and transit reinvestment zone pursuant to that state code Title 63N, Chapter 3, Part 6 of the Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone Act. And V, develop and adopt stationary plan in accordance with Section 10-9A-403.1. Those last two strategies, because we have a front runner station in the community, as well as bus rapid transit stations from UTA, those last two strategies are required this year, part of that new legislation. And so I'm not going to read every word verbatim, but this is the text element of the updated general plan document, showing we have to pick a strategy and then propose an implementation plan element to match that strategy. So this is not only the strategy, but also this is what we're doing as we get accessory apartment applications. This is what we anticipate, how many we've received out of an average of over the last 4 years, and how many we have currently. And Orem has a lot compared to many other communities. So that's kind of just summarizing the text for the first strategy. Second strategy, affordable senior housing. This is, like I said, this is this implementation plan for new units in the affordable senior housing overlay zone. And we have 5 projects that have been built that meet these standards and are providing affordable units for seniors in the city.
Are these projects single family residents? Are they condos?
They can be,
What
up
are
to
what's the mix?
Up to 4 units.
to 4 units.
They're not 2 stories, they're typically 1 story that you see. There's 6 of them throughout the city. They're typically 1 story, but they're usually quads, and one of the requirements is you can't have the doors all on the same facade. So you'll see one facing this way, one facing this, one back. So basically they look like, one home, but there are 4. There's several of them on Main Street, down on 12th South and Main, those red brick homes are similar to them. So there's several, these in the city, but they kind of blend in. And although there are 4 units, they typically look like a single family. Parking is now required to be in the back. It's required to be fenced. It's occupancy limited to 60 years and older, and have a median income of less than 80%. And that's an annual report that we do. So we make sure that these going forward still comply with the statute.
When was the last time one of these was built? Like,
There's currently one under construction on 16 South. The Housing Authority, Utah County has purchased one from a developer that was developing it, and they're under construction.
16 south and how far east to west?
It's east of State Street, a block. It's a deep lot, so if you're driving down 16th, you probably won't recognize or realize that there's a senior housing fourplex there. But those rules apply even on a deep lot. The doors cannot be on the same facade; it has to be facing in each direction. There's one up by the Catholic Church to there. If you can by there, those are senior housing projects.
Oh, sorry, any other questions about affordable senior housing overlay? Third strategy is that housing and transit reinvestment zone. So what that created is within I believe it's a mile, 3/4 mile, half-mile radius of a front runner station. They can create what they call a housing transit reinvestment zone. And so there is a property down by the front runner station that would meet that within that radius. That developer has approached the city, met with staff, council members, as to the interest and opportunity for that. It doesn't require a rigorous economic element to proceed. And so that's kind of where we're at, and that would require the city to actually go through that process and the developer to go through their own process, if I remember right.
So, yeah, if the developer chooses to go forward, we would have them, it also be on him or them. So to pay for whatever reports are required, the city is required to make the application. But in order for us to be confident in making the application, they would have to pay all those fees for different studies, hire a consultant to make sure it's even feasible to do before we would come back to the council to get their buy-in to make that application. So once it gets to the council, it's, yes or no, we want to participate or no, we don't. So it's not a lot of buy-in to the city, other than they would be on the hook to make that application. And talking to the applicant, we basically expressed our concerns that he will be the one footing the bill for all of it.
So the state doesn't mandate so many of these, but simply that we have a strategy to do this, is that correct?
So this is one of the strategies. So we don't have to choose this one, but because we have a property owner that's willing to go through that
I
process,
see,
it's just one of those, that's one that we can count.
I see.
Let's do it, and then if you choose to get down that road and decide that's not feasible, then we'll do it.
Questions? Any other questions? Okay, I'll hurry on this next steps. The last strategy is 4.4.2D stationary plans. This is a required element. And so we're proposing to go through a phase 1, phase 2 process of this. There actually is already a loose stationary plan created for the Orem front runner station, but it has never been formally adopted. And the new legislation requires certain elements of that plan. And so we'd be going through phase 1 process next year to make sure that the stationary plan existing will meet those new legislative requirements and adopt that plan. And phase 2, we would come back later, will be the bus rapid transit station area plans. I say plans, but it can be one plan. And we will be hiring a consultant to help us develop these professional consultants who have experience developing these stationary plans. This is a heavy burden for our own staff to facilitate that process by ourselves. And so they will be helping us, helping guide us through those two phased projects coming up. But those are required to be adopted till 2025, the actual plans, but we are required to address the future plans and steps and adopt those as a strategy at this point.
This is just an opinion question, but with the state mandating these things on us, how do you feel about that?
I think we'll go through the process, right? This process we're going through right now, we'll do the same thing for these stationary, where they come through the planning commission, get a recommendation, and then go on to the city council. But the state is mandating and they be adopted in their general.
Right, I understand that.
But the city is still responsible to come up with a plan. So the council can manipulate it or at least design it in a way that fits into the community.
But it seems like the reach of the state is greater with this than it's been.
They're getting,
that's the.
So it's our job, I guess, to try to make it fit into the neighborhoods, into the city. Make it
Are you bothered that they would have more reach into the city than that?
Well, I think it's safe to say that we would prefer not to have to do these. We have enough work to do that we don't.
I learned about this at that planning event that we went to. I was quite surprised how much the state has taken control of what heretofore were decisions within the city.
Well, and the state gives us the control, so they're reigning back the control, right?
We exist because they allow us to.
They allow the local governments to exist. But I know some of you have expressed an interest in getting involved in planning. We'll be involving you in these, and we encourage you to participate. When we bring the consultant on board and they start holding open houses, neighborhood meetings, and getting input, that's when we would like you involved to help get that in there as well.
There are some elements of the stationary plan legislation requirements, et cetera, that I believe offer a lot of flexibility to the city, like Jason was saying, to really match it to our local, to what really fits in the fabric of these areas, these stations. And if there's existing land uses that aren't compatible, we can list that as part of that flexibility of saying, hey, this is already developed. It was just developed. It very likely won't be developed for 30 more years. And therefore, you know, we're not gonna include that area in our stationary plan. So that's an example.
Well, you see, they're looking for more housing, it appears. I mean, that's the challenge. Orem has provided a lot of housing in recent years. I think you mentioned that. So what we've done in the past isn't going to count for what happens in the future.
The first two items that we have on here, the accessory apartments and the senior
Okay.
overlay, those are what we are continuing to
Okay.
do, and they count. Those two.
Okay, good,
So what the city's done in the past, and what we're continuing to do in the future,
yeah,
I mean, it counts, but we still have to do,
but there's a
moving
lot of,
forward, have to do
there's a lot
something.
of pushback within the community about high density housing now. It's like,
This is not talking about high density
yeah,
housing.
I understand.
Also to add to that, I think, it's safe to say that Orem's not the problem. This law is targeted towards maybe some other cities and we've probably provided our fair share.
Name three of them, would you?
No comment.
Yeah, and previously, just a kind of a helpful, when the first round of this legislation went through in 2019, you know, we adopted some strategies as at staff level, had support from the council and the mayor, previous mayor. And we were reporting on these, we were on good terms with the state and we're saying, hey, Orem is one of the leaders, we're doing a great job moving forward with progressing with, you know, trying to address the housing. But they, from their perspective, and the intent of that legislation. So we've had some really good momentum there. I think this new legislation did require some new, you know, put some new restrictions and incentives in. I think there's ways we can be creative moving forward to kind of really and try to go for those incentives in the future.
So right now, the concern is that we have something by October 1st. So my question is, if we approve it tonight, it will go to the, okay, there it is right there. It will go to the city council next week.
Yeah, so tonight we're, you know, and I'll do, you know, there's a recommendation. Staff recommends the planning commission forward a positive recommendation so that they can vote on it next week. And the amendment can happen before the October 1st deadline, so that we do not kind of face any kind of, you know, pressure from the state saying, hey, we would do that. Then the report element will be filed by October 1st as well at the staff level.
Terry, they said city council has seen this plan, is that right?
No, not the whole, several members of the city council.
Okay, and how comfortable is everybody?
So it's kind of like what we're hearing, we're holding our nose and go, well, we have to. What's the least painful way to do this?
And I think there is discussion going forward that can happen about it, especially like if you want to go to the 6th or other things we want to discuss. But I think the issue right now really is we need something in place by October 1st. And there's been,
So we chose the 4, that's the minimum we need, and that's.
So my comment, which I said before, show me, and I know we're trying to comply with the rules, but when Alpine and Napleton, some of the other cities, I'd like to see their plan and when they're complying.
Highland, yeah.
Highland, yeah.
we need to adjourn to the other room so we can start a meeting. Is that it?
This is the last of it.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
No, I stopped. So it's good. Can you just work with your own? So I'm gonna choose this. Let's do that. Let's see, so put this in the fridge.
I did send
Right, that means Jim's gonna take every camera to dinner. They're all mine. I should have thought of that. Rachel, I gave you my. It was his job. Let's see, take you one that's smart. Good job.
Ronald?
Yes, what do we have?
Okay. And you want the slide?
No, yeah, town home, run the town.
You remind me that my sandwich in the freezer, so it's separate from the others. So I come in here and wait, oh. Forgot
What
about
was in
that.
the freezer? It should be good.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
So yours? No problem. Testing. We are good to go.
All right, then I call this meeting to order to get started. We will start with an invocation by Tina.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to be able to meet here today. We're grateful to be able to discuss the needs of the city, and we ask for a spirit of cooperation and respect with one another and guidance to make the best decisions. We say these things humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, let's start with item 3.1. Rachel?
Item 3.1 is a request from Ramon and Rosalia Hernandez to extend the approval of Hernandez Plat A for an additional year. It's located at 584 North, 600 West in the R 7.5 zone. The proposed preliminary plat is splitting one lot into two, and the existing home on lot 1 will remain. Lot 1 is 7,510 square feet and lot 2 is 18,615 square feet. Here's the street view. And The requirements have not changed from last September, so staff recommends the planning commission extend the approval. Any questions?
Do you have something? Okay, is the applicant here? Do you want to say anything or? Can you come to the mic? Sorry.
Right here. We are wanting to extend it because we are still trying to recover from after COVID. We own a small family restaurant and we're doing better. We had to do plan B where we're selling some land abroad in order to start construction. So I think starting next year, we should be able to, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would anyone like to make a motion? Or are there any other comments?
I make a motion that we approve the request to extend the approval of the Hernandez Plat A for an additional year, located generally at 584 North, 600 West in the 7.5 zone.
I second it.
Okay, Murray?
Aye.
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 Okay. That passes. Item 2.3.
This is a request from the business licensing department to create a section for residential preschools and create a standard land use code for residential preschools. And this will just help them with enforcement and organizing their business licensing. Here is the proposed ordinance. It's very similar to the residential daycare ordinance. Here's the proposed new SLU code. And staff recommends you guys forward a recommendation to the city council.
Is the applicant here? Would they like to come and up by Rachel and share anything? That's fine too.
So yeah, we have one for daycares, but the state regulations for daycares is different than preschools. So we just need that separation so we can help regulate that better. That's all.
Thank you. So any other questions for them? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we will open for comments. Please come to the mic and state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. So we'll open up for that now. Okay, if there are no comments, we will close the public hearing and move on. Any comments? Any?
Do we need a motion on this or not?
Yeah, we need to
Okay.
motion it, but you can motion first or make comments first.
Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve the planning commission. Let's see, that we approve the
Positive
recommendation.
recommendation.
That what?
We provide a positive recommendation to the
Okay.
city council.
To enact section 22-6-9 M residential preschool SLU code 6265 and standard land use code 6265 residential preschool.
I second the motion. Aye.
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 Moving on to item 3.3.
Item 3.3 is a request from Development Services to amend home daycare and commercial daycare services pertaining to outdoor play areas. So in home daycare services, the amendment would require outdoor play areas to have a self-closing and self-latching gate, and that they shall have a soft surface play area. And in commercial daycares, the new ordinance would require them to have an outdoor play area that is soft surface, not located in a parking lot, and have a 6-foot fence with self-closing, self-latching gates. And staff recommends the planning commission forward a recommendation to the city council. Any questions?
No. I mean, y'all are the applicants, so do you have anything more to add? I assume we've covered it. So, okay,
Okay.
if there's no,
I move we forward a positive recommendation to city council to amend section.
Sorry, I believe we need a public hearing for this.
oh, right, I'm so sorry. Yes, we do need a public hearing. It is a public hearing. Thank you for catching that. So we'll open for public comments. Open the public hearing. Okay, if no one's coming forward, we will close the public hearing.
I'll try this again here. I move we forward a positive recommendation to the city council to amend section 22-6-9A8 home daycare services, child and adult, SLU code 6263, pertaining to outdoor play areas, and enact section 22-6-9B14, commercial daycare services, SLU codes 6261 and 6262, pertaining to outdoor play areas.
I second
Aye.
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 it. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3.5.
Item
3.4, sorry, I said the wrong one.
Item 3.4 is a request for the city to rezone the property at approximately 720 north, 1515 east from business park to a new zone, the PD 51 zone. Here is the location. The image on the left shows the radius where all property owners within 1,500 feet of the property were notified via postcard. Here is the proposed concept plan. This includes 25 residential units in Orem. Here is the existing plat and the proposed plat, and the proposed plat will come back for approval when they apply for a site plan if the rezone is granted. Here's the existing zoning. There's the proposed zoning map. Here's the traffic circulation plan showing the proposed new roads. Here's what the elevations of the homes would look like. The total height is 36'9". Here's the proposed text of the PD 51 zone. And this was continued from 2 weeks ago to see what the Provo Planning Commission did. And the Provo Planning Commission they recommended approval for all 4 items with the condition that a development agreement is signed. And last night, the Provo City Council met and they continued the item for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Here's the street views of the property. And staff recommends the Planning Commission consider a recommendation. Any questions for me?
Questions? Okay. Do we want to have the applicant come forward and add any additional information from last time? You're welcome to come up and.
Yes, so the applicant sent me a PowerPoint that he would like to share with you guys.
Okay.
Let me go.
Good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Ivory. I'm with Folger Pratt. I'm the development lead on this project, 450 East Capitol. And okay. You could just advance it. Is that okay? And I think 2 weeks ago when I was here, I could have done a better job just kind of laying out the entirety of what we're doing, whether it be in Provo or Orem, because these parcels are contiguous and, and we have the city line, dividing them. And just wanted to run through and kind of, share the vision and kind of the why we're asking for what we're asking for today. So if you wouldn't mind. So what you see before you is all of the property that's been accumulated that's owned by a holding company. If it's up there and it's, colored and highlighted in some fashion, that's the property. We're proposing to rezone that purple area in Provo from a mixed use kind of residential use to commercial. And we're proposing to rezone that yellow area from a business park residential use, or from a business park use to a residential use. You can see the 3.15 acres in question. And I'll talk to that in the next slide, but that little panhandle there is in Orem. You can see the right angle that goes through there is depicted as the city line. And then the business park zoning shown in light blue is currently business park, and we intend for it to stay designated as business park zoning. Next slide. This is a kind of a blow up showing what we have. The overall extent of that business park zoning. It extends to the I call it the Nexio building, but to the property to the west, as well as to the substation. I guess if the substation were to go away, that would be business park zoned. And then there's some other property that we don't own west of the river, or I'm sorry, east of the river, that is also zoned business park. And so you'll see that the plan development 51 residential zone area is kind of what we call internally the panhandle, which was that skinny little piece there. If you could, next slide, please. A couple of things I think are important to mention, and I think we didn't do a good job last time we were here, is explaining that the PD 51 as proposed only applies to that little area shown as PD 51. Orem has a rule or an ordinance that says if you do a PD, it has to be at least 3 acres. As proposed, it's 3.15 acres. So I'd be willing to bet this will be, if it's approved, the smallest PD zone in Orem. What we're asking for is 8 units per acre, and we've got the max height that we've talked about. We're following the setbacks, the private utilities. The exterior finishes are going to be high quality finishes, and no vinyl or aluminum siding. The units are not stacked. They're townhomes, so people live side to side. They have a party wall, but they're not living on top of one another. And there's no request to extend any of the residential further into the business park zoning. And any other use that we're going to bring forth in the business park zoning is currently a permitted use with that zone. So next slide. So this is kind of an illustrative site plan that shows the 25 units. It's not 100% accurate, but this is an illustrative site plan that kind of shows, the parcel in question and what we're trying to do. And for all intents and purposes, we want this to live and feel like part of the overall townhome community that we're working on in Provo. You've already seen, but we think it's a fairly highly articulated and good-looking product. One of our goals with townhomes is to make each townhome distinct enough that you can say, hey, this one's my unit. I live in the middle unit, or I live in the unit with the stone, or I live in the unit that's got the that has a little mansard roof or what have you. So we try to articulate that and do some good-looking product. One of the questions people have asked is, well, why isn't it for sale, or why are you doing townhomes for rent, et cetera. I wanted to put this slide together because this shows the most recent kind of Class A apartment communities that have been built kind of in the vicinity. You've got the Devon, the Aston, and what is the Exon that are at the mall. And there's the flats at Riverwood. We don't have a marketing name, but I'm not going to have it start with the, just because it seems there seems to be a trend there, and we'd like to be a little different. But in addition to being different, we wanted larger units. We wanted more open space. We wanted to put it west of the river and get it away from University, so it would it wouldn't be necessarily next to a busy street. And and we thought, putting it next to Riverwoods Business Park, where we've got all those jobs, you can never go wrong with housing if it's next to jobs. That's just one of the kind of telltale rules in real estate. If you build something next to jobs, it'll fill up. So next slide. As of Monday, we went on Zillow and we looked at the availability of homes for rent. And the reason we went to homes is because not everybody wants to live in an apartment. Not everyone wants to live with something that's, in a stacked flat with somebody above you or below you. Some of our associates that we've worked with have recently located to this area. And the hardest thing about hiring someone was they were trying to find somewhere to live. They said, no, I'm not going back into an apartment with my 3 little kids. I don't want to buy a house yet. And, houses are really expensive. Let's just rent a house for a little while and figure it out. But the problem is there are no houses to rent. As of Monday on Zillow, we did a 2-mile radius map and looked at it. We found 3 houses, and the filter that we had was it needed to be minimum 2 bedroom, minimum 1.5 bath. So there really is no rental housing, per se. So if you could, next slide. Utah County, the median home price is $515,000. I believe the Provo Orem area, it's a little more expensive. It's $520,000. Next slide. This is what the math looks like to get a mortgage. These are interest rates as of Monday. But with principal, interest, tax, and insurance, you're looking at a monthly payment of about $2,900 to buy that median home price, to buy that median home now. The big kicker, the thing that makes it hard, is you need the downstroke. You got to have that down payment, and 20% of the median home price works out to $106,000. So we feel that the townhomes fill this gap in the market. And if you looked at, on the little slide, we've shown, what a studio 1, 2, and 3 bedroom rent, is currently quoted at the flats at Riverwood. That's our nearest comp. We've shown what a median home is priced at, and you go from that $2,200 a month to the $2,900 a month for median home. These townhomes that we're proposing that are anywhere from 2 to 4 bedrooms, that are bigger, that are a little different than what you'd live in an apartment, would fill that gap in the market. And that's why, we proposed townhomes in this location. So this was really kind of like the vision. If you go back to, if you could take it back to the, I guess the first slide. Nope. That one's fine. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. Next one. Not the PD zone. It's sensitive, isn't it? When you're, it would be this, I guess, the slide, the number 3. Yeah. What, the property that we own is hatched in gray. And again, we have not really shown any concept plan or, what we want to do in the business park. We are asking for a text amendment today. And we're asking for a text amendment mainly because it affects what that hatched blue area would do. Right now, if we're to develop anything in the business park, there's a requirement that our architecture match the Nexio building. That requirement is from when, everything was zoned and it was planned to be a series of buildings in a business park, and they, those buildings were to match. And so obviously, one office building got built, and then things, sat for, a decade or two. And now there's, now we're ready to move forward, but we'd like to not have to match the architecture, with whatever we move forward with in the rest of it. And, and our plan for the rest of it is to develop a destination dining to have some restaurant opportunities there, as well as some Airbnb. So we do want to develop and have some hospitality. We just don't want 25. We're happy with the amount that we're kind of thinking about, and we'd like to offer those residential units shown in the proposed PD 51 as long-term typical 8 to 24 month leases, as opposed to nightly or weekly rentals. And so that, that's, I just wanted to lay out the vision and see if there's any immediate questions on that, because I think I could have done a whole lot better job 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And just to be clear, the last bit he was talking about applies to item 3.5, and we will be discussing that separate from the residential PD 51 zoning for those who are here in attendance and for clarification. So.
Could you tell us about Folger and Pratt a little bit?
Okay. Yes, I work for Folger Pratt. We are based in Potomac, Maryland, but we have a lot of Utah roots. Our founder, among other things, was developed Crossroads Plaza, across from Temple Square up in Salt Lake. We are active, I believe, in, DMVs, which would DC, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Texas, Utah, California, Hawaii. So we're pretty active. Folger Pratt West is based out of Southern California, but we're pretty active here in Utah. We just finished up in partnership a deal in Draper, and we're active here. When we were asked to respond to the RFP that 50 East put out on the, on this property and this master plan, we were the only, I guess, out-of-state developer, quote unquote, that was invited. Everybody else, came in and said, blow out the density, do 5-story apartments, go for it. That's how you maximize it. We came in and looked at the site and said, guys, we're suggesting townhomes. And it was the out-of-state, California guys that came in and said, let's do townhomes. The one thing I'll say about 50 East, I've worked for a lot of developers and like the big capital people. I've worked for Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Abu Dhabi Investment Corp and sovereign wealth funds, and I've built a lot of apartments for a lot of investors. Most investors are either IRR or cash on cash driven. They want to see returns, and it's all about how much are you going to make. One of the big differences working for 50 East, they live within a mile, they work within a mile. They're obviously it's not a charity, but at the end of the day, they're really trying to do right and do good placemaking, and they're long-term stakeholders. And if I were a planning commissioner, if I were a city, I would like to have those long-term stakeholders doing the investments in my city, because I think there's a greater level of interest in really wanting to do something that they can be proud of and that they can live with for years on end.
I mean, the property owner of Nexio was in our pre-meeting and was concerned that they weren't consulted. And I know there's no requirement to consult. That's not by law or anything. And obviously the city has noticed them. Curious as to kind of your choice around just moving forward without consultation with the property owner.
Property owner was obviously they were provided notice. We did not go door to door and knock on people's door and show them what we were planning. Our plans are still pretty nebulous for this next phase. We know big picture what we want it to be, but we've been pretty focused, kind of working south to north, just because it's a master plan and there's a lot to do.
Yeah, and this fundamentally changes the nature of the property from a business park into something that is different.
It fundamentally changes 3.15 acres of this, a sliver. The panhandle gets changed, yes, but every other use that we're going to propose in the business park is a permitted use.
Say some more about that.
Okay, we're not asking for the entire business park area that we own for this PD, this Plan Development 51, those rules that are one of our slides that we kind of showed. That only applies to that 3.15 acres. It does not apply to the rest of the business park. And so I would say, yes, it does provide a change, because it goes residential on the sliver that's shown in yellow that's hatched. That's a change there, but the rest of the blue area is not changing. And that was one of the point that I was trying to make. And in fact, if we, say for instance, we just said, never mind guys, we're going to withdraw our application. Other than the requirement to match the Nexio building's architecture, we could do what we're proposing to do by right. It's just we would have to rent those out on a nightly or a weekly or a VRBO basis, and not operate it as on a yearly lease.
So you could you're saying, have a very similar look and feel exactly what you've got, but you would just have a different use, and that would be.
We could
within
have a different
that-
use.
That
If
would
it
be in
was-
the business park.
Yes, a
regulation.
hospitality use would be permitted. I'm here today because I'm saying I don't want to build these townhomes and rent them out on a VRBO basis. I want to build the townhomes and rent them out on a year, 1 year leases. But if we withdrew the application, we could build the same thing and rent it out on a hospitality, treat it like a hotel or a VRBO, which, you know, the reason we're here today is because we don't want to do that. You know, and then the other reason we're here, which is, you know, obviously the third item, or I believe that we're going to come to you with, is it's really restrictive to have to match Nexio's architecture, because we'd have a bunch of little office buildings, you know, and when we're trying not to, you know, we want to do something a little different.
So an obvious question I have is that you could do the other, but you've chosen to do this.
Yes.
And what would be the reasons for that? Could you tell us that?
We are planning a hospitality component, but those a VRBO is a little different. You know, you may have a bigger kitchen and a bigger gathering area, but you don't have walk-in closets. You know, you don't need garages that are as big. You know, you do put in mud rooms, you know, for people's, you know, wet and drippy ski stuff. You know, so the floor plan changes. And obviously we want to do a floor plan that's a townhome floor plan, which is, you know, people live in townhomes and they live very differently than they vacation. So that's one of the big reasons, you know, and if you look at how, you know, those units there along in our residential or the proposed PD 51 zone, that's actually, you know, that's kind of like the riverfront, and those will quite frankly be kind of the premium units within the townhome community just because of their location.
Ryan, can you confirm that they actually could do hospitality in that zone rather than rentals? I'm curious, that's kind of the first I've heard that. I maybe misunderstood or didn't hear that prior.
Last time I looked, I'm actually looking it up right now to just make sure I'm right, but hospitality wasn't approved use in that zone, such as a hotel or.
It wasn't approved.
It is approved.
It is approved.
I'm just looking it up right now just to double check that. And Aaron
Jason.
probably is as well.
Yes, I have looked it up, and it's hotels, tourist courts, and motels are permitted use in the BP zone.
That's different than VRBO, potentially, correct?
Well, I mean, if VRBO is essentially a hotel or a motel, or right, it's a short-term.
Yeah, it's a short term. I was saying VRBO because that's just, it's that, I guess it would be a type of property that
I stay in
VRBO is.
VRBOs every month. I know what VRBO
Okay,
is.
yeah,
I love them. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I understand what we're talking about.
But usually it's a onesie twosie condo owner, you know, like
Right.
renting their own product as opposed to, you know,
I get that.
a community, but yes.
Are there any other questions? Do you have a question? No? Okay. So we have previously held a public hearing on this, but I'm willing to open up for another public hearing on 3.4, which is the rezone and creating the PD 51. So if anyone would like to come forward, I will open the floor for public comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Lynette Kern, 934 North, 1530 East. And I think maybe one of the reasons the Nexio owner might be upset is that although we did get a postcard for this meeting, I believe there may have been a neighborhood meeting held nearly a year ago. And when I look at who attended that meeting, usually if there's any developments up in that area, we turn out in force. But there were only 4 people in attendance, and I did not ever see anything. All of the people who live along 1560 who will be most impacted by the traffic, nobody on that street has been noticed on anything having to do with this at all, because they're not in that required footage. But I looked at the names of who attended that neighborhood meeting, and nobody who lives really close to it that's in my neighborhood was in attendance. So I'm sure that, and I've spoken to the people at Wills and they never saw a notice either. So that's one of our main concerns. I mean, whether they mailed them or not is another thing. Sometimes I understand from doing weddings and things, sometimes things that are mailed don't always get delivered. So I'm not saying they didn't mail them, but it wasn't a big neighborhood meeting ahead of time. So a lot of us just don't really know, we have a lot of questions about what's happening because of the lack of that. One of the big issues I kind of have, and I've had this with the city in the past, about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, I got very involved in city matters because I had so many concerns over developments that were coming through. And in fact, I was on that commission that did the zoning for along 800 North, and we were really careful about how we designed that to provide a nice buffer for the residential without it. We all on that committee thought, if I wasn't willing to live next to it, I wouldn't expect someone else to live next to it. And that's always the way I feel about things. So on the city website, it states that basically the DRC exists to make sure that no development even comes before you guys unless it's in agreement with the city master plan. So I'm always surprised when developers are always trying to push and change. It's so, why do we make a master plan? And it was just changed in 2018. In fact, that wasn't that long ago. And I know a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into that design. So I am always a little concerned when someone comes in and they just want to maximize their profits from their property based on the current whims of the market. Another question I have is with the bike path. When I look at the current master plan, there's a lot of stuff on there about what people are requesting and what the hopes are for the bike path on that south side of 8th North. And I don't know, I can't tell from the development what they have planned for that. Sorry, I'll hurry. Also, just the impact on the river, I don't know what their requirements are on that to make sure that there's no big impact on how the river will be impacted since we drink the water that comes from the area. And also, I know that there's also a recommendation put forward right now to change that BP zone. So it might not be part of this, but
Can you hold that for our next?
Yeah, I will.
We'll do a public meeting for that.
Yes,
public
I'm just
hearing for that
saying
part
like
too.
little increment,
you.
he's not talking about it right now, but he's saying like I could do this, but you also want to change that BP zone, what's already there and what's already allowed. So that's another thing. But I'm always looking for the silver lining. So I'm thinking, well, maybe the benefit is to any property owner in Orem who wishes to maximize their profits, right? So I have property close there and I have like land that butts onto 2 roads. So maybe I can just come and say, you know what, I want to put a bunch of like senior housing on my property. There's a big need for that.
You may be able to do that.
Yeah, so maybe I can get like a double access there and I can just fill up my property and start making a lot of money too.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Master plan needs to be more than just a suggestion. That's all.
Thank you. Did anyone from this, another person, sorry. We'll come back to questions in a minute, but thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Bird. I'm a business owner. We just purchased a new office building by the Harmon's grocery store. Sort of up the street and there's 2 similar looking buildings right on 8th North, east of the gas stations. We also attended, we were one of the 4 people that attended the neighborhood meeting that was held just across the street from the proposed property. Anyway, I work for Invictus Title. I'm a title guy. We're super excited about the project. Between Dairy Queen and Mi Ranchitos, which we love, we think this area, number one, we think the traffic will be improved with the work that they're doing. And also we think the restaurant retail areas that they have planned will be super awesome. And I have a lot of young kids that really love the Riverwoods area and it's hard to find housing. So as far as a vote, we hope that these guys get a plus nod from you guys. That's it.
Thank you.
My name's Greg Bird. I'm also business partners with Brian, who just came up here. I was one of the 4 at that meeting. The question was asked about Nexio. Why weren't they consulted? Well, people were sent their letters and many chose just not to show up. But as far as what I've listened to here, we're excited for the opportunity that they're planning on bringing to Orem City. This should be a no-brainer with, as far as the opportunity. I mean, what they can currently do with their space without the text amendment here versus what they're proposing, it's a win-win for the city in many ways. The densities are not, they're not building the high-story apartment complexes like they mentioned. I own a property leasing company here locally, and it is extremely difficult to find A+ properties. Outside the flats that got built off Center Street in Provo, down in the river bottoms there's really not an upscale opportunity for people who love to live here that want some affordability. So I think what they're proposing is fantastic. Couldn't be more elated. And, talk about profits and whatever, I think that's the wrong direction. It should be, sometimes you master plan something and you say, you got to put the round ball in the round hole, but sometimes you get square pegs. Not everybody's the exact same, but I think the intent of the code, they've done a phenomenal job. If you just look at the architecture and what they've done, there's a lot better ways to save money, and they're not doing. This is going to be a gorgeous place, so I'm 100% for it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Brown. I actually am glad I came tonight. I live close by and the development sounds great. I will say, please don't make them match the Nexio building. That would be a bad decision because it's older and it's business, and this wants to be, residential. So let's make it pretty. So I would say, make sure I would be all for that. And any chance I can put in a plug for that intersection, the 8th North and 1560, we live right up the street and it's so dangerous. And the people that are the most dangerous are those that are visiting. And so anyone that is, if we do have a rental option at some point in that business park, they're going to cause problems. Fast food people are going to cause problems. People that don't, the ones that are super cautious are those of us that live there, because we see accidents weekly. I'm testifying in court in 2 weeks because of a girl getting hit, a body, not a car to body, and her flying 30 feet in front of me. So any plug I can put in for that intersection to get fixed before the rest of the business park, maybe it's not to you guys as much as it is the developer, but that road has to have some changes or you're going to continue to hurt and kill people with the setup that it currently is. So that is my biggest plug for that area. I'm all for making it beautiful and having places like this sounded great as far as for some people to live and some exciting options going forward. But I don't know if it needs to be a huge roundabout, because I know the light issue, they've said a light is not feasible with that turn and the way it's all set up. There just has to be some more options explored to handle the traffic. So that would be my biggest plug for all of this.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nobody else who'd like to come forward, we will close the public hearing. And would anyone from the city like to talk about the master plan or notification? Oh, yeah, you can.
Could I be permitted to speak again? Or?
Yeah, good.
Information's good, right?
Yeah, information's great.
I took a couple notes because I wanted to hear what the concerns were from the public comments. I have bike path, an impact on the river, and 8th North, and I can at least speak to some of those. As far as a bike path goes, that's the main reason why Provo didn't take a vote last night at City Council. They chose to push it, and we know that they're going to ask. Okay. We know that they're going to require that we enter into a development agreement. We already have a development agreement, but they're going to insist that there be a continuation of a bike path on the west side of the river, through the community. That was a little different than what the parks people had insisted on. And if you read the current development agreement, we're dedicating land and we're doing a continuation of, and we're continuing the official Provo River Trail along University, but they wanted another, they wanted this path. So, we're gonna be working on that over the next 2 weeks. As far as the river impact, this was the old Hale power plant. And there was a lot of remediation work that was done. There were leaky underground storage tanks that were pulled. There were massive amounts of coal fly ash that were exported out. The states there's no further action from the state. Things were cleaned up to the satisfaction of the state years ago. There's no further action. It's been given a clean bill of health. We wouldn't have acquired the property, if that weren't the case. And so, and then anytime you develop in proximity to a river, it's not only the state that's governing, it's a federal waterway. And so it's environmentally sensitive, and you have to really be on your game from a development standpoint, because there's all kinds of rules to protect the river. Finally, as far as 8th North goes, this has been we've probably spent more time talking about 8th North and 1550 East than any other component of the project. And here's what I've learned as the applicant. Number one, we as the applicant are not able to go directly to UDOT and propose a change. UDOT does not, they don't talk to landowners and individual landowners, they talk to cities. What, the Orem process is zoning first, then you do a site-specific plan. The zoning action will say, okay, we'll basically trigger that we update and enlarge the current traffic study to include all of the proposed new land uses. That goes into Provo and it goes into Orem. At that point, those two cities, and their engineering departments will kind of beat up the traffic study. Then it goes to UDOT. Here to fix 8th North, and specifically speaking to fix 8th North, we want to do something, but it's not within our power to do it. But how it will get fixed is we move things forward, and we'll keep pushing and pushing from our end as the applicant. Once there's some sort of mitigation that makes sense, Orem City will be the applicant, Orem City will be the owner, then it goes to UDOT. And so that's how things get fixed. We're totally on board for fixing this. I've met with Haysom within the last week, and he just he knows a girl in his neighborhood that was severely injured in that intersection. And so that may be the best legacy of this project, regardless of what restaurant we're able to bring to town. But we absolutely want to do something about 8th North. It's just we need to partner with the city. We can't do it alone. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sam, that is correct.
Yes. And Sam, did you not go to the site with Haysom and craft what might be a plausible solution for this problem?
We didn't go to the site. Haysom and I sat down, and then we also sat down again with Jim, and then we went over the previous study that was performed in 2015. I also reached out to UDOT and discussed with them not only some other traffic concerns here, but on University Avenue, just to understand the process. So yeah, to what Mr. Ivory spoke to is that will be the process. The zoning happens. We go through site plan approval. We will look at the mitigation efforts, and then we will partner with that with the developer to go ahead and install that.
And Ms. Kern, you had issues principally to do with the traffic, as I remember you stating, that 8th North.
Definitely my biggest issue, but
Yeah.
the suggestion to do a right in and right out only, what that will do is will force all.
Excuse me, if you don't come to the microphone, it won't get recorded.
Sorry. Thanks, Cheryl.
My biggest concern about doing a right in and right out only, especially, there's a couple things. It will force all of my neighborhood traffic down to 1400 East, which already is a problem. There's not a light there either. And it's got some business traffic there. And like she was saying, the people who make the biggest errors are always the visitors. So people coming in and out of that business park It's insane when, so then you end up having to go through more neighborhoods to get down to where the light is to get out of there. So I just get concerned that we're just redirecting the problem and putting it on somebody else instead of, and then, you do cause harm to Will's and Mama Chu's, and that's kind of hard to force that action in order to provide an opportunity for a different developer. That's concerning to me. I definitely want that intersection fixed. But the other thing with the right turn right only is then what people do is they turn right and go half a block and do a U-turn in the middle of the road. That's what I would do if I was stuck there. I'm gonna be honest. So I do it sometimes when I can't make a left turn. So it's not a solution. It creates additional problems. So that's my concern there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that we frequent that restaurant, and you take your life in your hands when you pull out. People come out of that canyon like they're falling off a mountain, which they are. And the other day I was with a grandson. We were looking to cross that road and go east. I think we waited for 15 minutes. And even then it was risky as we crossed the road. Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. Yeah.
Sam, I have a question actually about UDOT. If all goes well with the traffic study, they still would prioritize, right? Like if they decide to make a change, and then that falls into whatever year they want to make the change, right? We could still be 5 years out on them making the change if they approve it.
Not necessarily. In my conversations with UDOT this last week, it really depends on what's going to happen there, right? I mean, there could be all kinds of different ways to mitigate that. But to everyone's point, I mean, we have to bring everyone together to understand what the solution is going to be. We have to include those folks on the north side of the road to be included in that. So I would think that the dollar amount that we're talking about is reasonable. And I think UDOT has a funding mechanism, and so will the city to participate and get that built. So no, I wouldn't think it'd be years out. I think it would be fairly soon that we could be able to have something built there.
Well, we've closed the public hearing. Can I reopen it? Or I guess, have I closed the public hearing? I haven't. I thought I did, but yeah, I can open up the public hearing again. You can come forward. I'm in charge. You may come speak. Please do. Yeah.
My name is Ron Woolley. I live in Provo, and I attended the meeting last night where the city council addressed this issue. And I came here tonight to find out what was happening in Orem, because I am a part owner in a building that's at the south edge of the Provo part of this development. And it joins the proposed area that is to be rezoned from commercial, which it is now and has been for 25 years, when I built my building, to medium density residential. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things that I think you should know about before you make your decision. The part that is being talked about for Orem is a tiny part of this entire project. It's coming at you piecemeal. The big orange area that appeared on the slide is the Provo part. It's 14 something acres. And it was listed on the slide as being residential. It is not yet. It's currently commercial, and that's the issue that's before the city council that was postponed for 2 weeks so that this could be more thoroughly discussed. The other issue that I think is a little bit confusing is that the small part that you have that's against the Provo River, if this zoning change is made, there will never be an opportunity for either you or Provo to put a pedestrian trail path along the west side of the river. Currently, that trail goes across a bridge about a few hundred feet into this project. And that's what they're talking about when they're saying they're making arrangements for there to be a trail continuing. The rest of the way, which is another 0.4 of a mile, up to 800 North would be forever eliminated from the possibility of having a pedestrian pathway, trail, bicycle path, jogging path on the west side of the river. And the area that is described on this document as being future development north of where you're doing it takes in a whole bunch of that. So there's an opportunity right now to develop the trail if it remains commercial in Provo. And unless you make some kind of an arrangement for that to happen, it will be forever gone. And I just want you to know that before you make your decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments right now? Okay, I will close the public meeting again. Jerry, do you want to say anything? Do you have any questions? Murray?
Yeah, I love the development. But I don't like the process because we're changing something, we're changing zones. There's been property owners there for a decade. I don't know how long the Nexio property owners have been there. And I can see, the property owner says, well, I'm going to lose millions of dollars. Well, if the property owner loses millions of dollars, it'll be because buildings aren't in demand anymore. It won't be because of this development. And yet, so I'm 50-50, but I think if I had to side one way or the other, I'd probably side with the way it's currently zoned, despite the fact that I think it's a valid use. I mean, when you look at Provo, that entire Riverwoods district is just a combination of retail, residential business. So that's not totally inconsistent at all with what's there. And I exercise up in the canyon at least once a week, sometimes twice, and I drive from the other part of Orem right behind Will's. So I know why that would be a very attractive place. But I get concerned as a property owner, if I go buy a property somewhere and someone wants to come rezone next to me, that creates a challenge. And it's something that many people here might be aware of. That's been one of my big reasons for being here on the Planning Commission, was because someone wanted to rezone from property behind my property and next to where I live. So while I love the development, I guess I would feel much more comfortable if they had approached the property owner and said, what do we need to do to make this work? So I'll say that. With regard to traffic, no matter what goes in there, whether it's this development or something that goes in the future, the traffic issue is going to have to be addressed. So I don't see the traffic issue as being really relevant to our recommendation, because whenever this happens, traffic's going to have to be dealt with and to the satisfaction of neighbors. Those are just my thoughts, and for me, this is, I don't know exactly where to go with this, but I think I know where I'm leaning.
Just as for what our options are right now, we can choose to table this again. Provo will hear it October 4th. I'm saying what our options are. I'm putting them forth. So October 4th with us addressing this again on October 5th, or we can go ahead and make a positive or negative recommendation to the city council on this. Are we ready to make a decision on this? Yeah, go ahead.
Let me make a couple of comments as well, if I could. And
absolutely.
Murray, you stated things so well. My sentiments, I think it's a wonderful development with great possibilities and would be a wonderful asset to our community and to Provo. Changing the zoning is a concern that I have, but it sounds like you could do something different and be in compliance with the zoning. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So just by,
as long as it's a hospitality, hotel, motel type oriented.
So that's in my mind a relatively minor change, and that would overcome your objection. And Folger Pratt, the quality of the company and what they do represents really, in my mind, a great opportunity for us. So just to brush this very solid and experienced and high quality organization aside is something that I don't think is a wise thing to do. And I agree about the traffic issue. The public access to The river, I don't know, Jim, if you have something to say about that or not, to address that concern, I'd be interested to hear what your response is.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss that. It was, I believe, council member, one of the council members last night was very, very specific in Provo that said, we want a trail and we want the trail to continue northward, towards Orem, towards 8th North, and we want it on the west side of the river. So we are, in the next 2 weeks, we are amending our development agreement to provide that access through the community to, on the west side of the river. So there's a continuation of that trail that starts in Ron Last Park. And if you don't feel like crossing the footbridge and going up to University, you will be able to take that, as far north as, as 8th North. So it's that is something that we are that we're committing to do.
Mr. Woolley, does that what would be your response? I don't want to have a debate between the two of you, but
this is the first time I've heard that, and I'm very pleased.
Okay.
I'd like very much to discuss it with you.
Okay, well, I mean, we're going to put it in writing with Provo, and we will do the same with Orem. And quite frankly, if you want us to enter into a development agreement, a belt and suspenders, the 3.15 acres limits us to 3.15 acres of residential.
Yeah.
And that's the way the PD zone works. But if you want us to go belt and suspenders and enter into a development agreement to further define what we will and will not do, we're happy to do that. We'll proffer that.
Well, thank you very much for your
thank you.
response. Mr. Woolley, were you going to say something? Maybe you should come up here so you can speak into the.
Jim, are you taking over my meeting?
I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
Yeah,
do that.
he can come and respond.
I take that as very good news, and I'm very pleased about it. In looking at this since last night about the prospects of the trail, and it seems like that's really a critical thing. In that 0.4 of a mile from the Ron Last Park up to 8th North, you get across the footbridge in the Ron Last Park to go the way we go now up to University, and then to the underpass at 800 North, because you can get under to get to all the way to the canyon to Bridalveil. If they allow us the trail to be put in along the west side, they also have some property on the east side, I'm sorry, and one other place has some property. If that could be also worked out, so you could put a trail on both sides, you'd have 2 loops that you could do, because there's a bridge across coming from the Nexio building to University Avenue. So you'd have the footbridge, and then you'd have the road across from Nexio going to University Avenue. Then you could put just a footbridge across right at the base of 800 North that would connect up to the trail up to Bridalveil Falls. And you'd have 2 loops right there, and you'd have an uninterrupted Provo River Trail from the Riverview Park, I believe it is, 1.5 miles of uninterrupted trail. The last 0.4 of the mile would be 2 double loops. It would be the most wonderful place to go walking along the trail in Orem and Provo, and then access all the way up to the canyon. It'd be a wonderful asset. So I'm really hoping that we can do that. We can put this together. And that I'm very pleased about that. I have one other issue with the thing down at the other end, but I'm very pleased about that. And that's probably my biggest issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do you have any other comments or?
Well, yeah, one more. Okay. This is a decision of the city council. We simply make a recommendation. So the burden is on them, but I feel good about it personally.
Okay. Tina, would you like to say anything?
So I just want to say that from the beginning, I've been concerned about traffic and especially 8th North. As a mother, I've had a son on 1600 North that was struck in a crosswalk by a car that ran a red light. So for me, it's very, very important that we find a way to address it. But also I regret the fact that we don't really have the teeth to do anything with UDOT.
Yeah, there are some things that are out of our control right now. And I mean, as far as me, for where I'm at, I feel that they're the property owner. This is allowed under our current city code. I think what they're proposing is reasonable use for that property, and it will be consistent with whatever Provost's going in. And so, you know, I'm ready to make them. Is anyone else?
Well, I think it would be important to have that development agreement that those trails are there. If we make a recommendation.
Jason, would you like to?
So that's something we will proffer to the city council.
Okay.
So that'll be worked out between now and the city council. We'll make, now that he's agreed to do that, we'll work with our attorney's office to develop that. And so it's nothing that you don't need to worry about. You can make that as a condition. But we will work that out with, sign it before it gets to the city council.
So as a condition of the development agreement is in place.
Yeah, but we could do that, but we'll make sure that's done as well.
Okay. Okay.
I do have one other concern. It seems to me that these will probably appeal more to the younger generation, the younger families who can't afford a home now. Young families have young children who aren't necessarily watched like some of us used to watch our children. And I'm concerned about the river and the children. Can you address that?
Yeah, that's something that is it's tough. And when you say I guess the one thing that I would say, maybe I take issue with that is when the kids aren't watched like they were when we were. When I was a kid, my parents' rules were, get home before the streetlights come on, and in the summertime, and I got myself in and out of a whole lot of trouble before the streetlights came on. Nowadays, there's a lot more helicopter parenting, and the days of sending your kids out with $5 in summer and to go take care of themselves, like that's long since gone. But I do worry about the river. I'm pretty sure the Army Corps of Engineers isn't going to allow us to put a fence along the river. It's, in fact, there's a setback requirement from the river, and there's a no-go zone. Like there's very little that can be developed other than this trail that we're talking about. Maybe a trail or a bench or something, but any structure is very prohibited and very governed as to what we can and can't do within that setback from the river. We do have some open space. We have a clubhouse, a leasing center, a pool area. The pool is something that's governed by the health department, and there's all these rules that govern pools and pool gates and how you can get in and get out. But yes, there's a river. And so, with any property that's riverfront or that's fronting a natural body of water, you do have that. It would, it's terrible, if someone were to, if a kid were, but at the same time, there's parking lots and there's streets and there's a lot of things that can endanger a 3 or 4 year old that's running around, on their own. So I don't know what I could do as the developer to safe off the river, so that is a tough question. And quite frankly, I don't know if there's an answer.
And I might clarify my statement a little about not watching them. I have 9 children, and I see how they take care of their children. And it drives me crazy to go on outings with them.
Yeah.
So I'm going from personal.
Yeah, my kids would say I'm a
there.
Yeah, my kids would say I'm a helicopter parent, and they are always asking me to back off. So it's I probably err on the overly cautious side.
But I've been out there and I walked the entire property twice now.
Okay.
And it just concerns me greatly.
It's a legitimate concern. So, thank you. And I guess the one other comment I'd make before we go into it is the nice thing about a PD is that they are set. That's what would go in that 3.15 acres. And they would be held to that. So that's another factor, to consider. So are we ready to make a motion?
I make a positive recommendation to the city council to enact Appendix YY of the Orem City Code by adding the concept plan and elevations and amending Section 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the city of Orem by changing the zone of 3.15 acres from the business park BP zone to the PD 51 zone at approximately 720 north, 1550 east.
I second. Jim?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
It's 3-2, so it's passed, it passed.
It will go to the council without a recommendation.
Okay. All right.
Because it has to have 4 votes in favor of either for or against. So
Even
a
with
3-2
one?
is a split vote, and we'll
Okay.
just say that there's no recommendation. They'll have the minutes and they'll have all your notes. So they'll have that, but there is no recommendation from the planning commission.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay. Item 3.5.
I'm working on it.
You're good.
Okay, item 3.5 is a request to amend a portion of Appendix A to allow fast food in the business park zone and to change the business park zone from allowing, so they wouldn't have to match the Nexus building. Here is the proposed amendment in the SLU code. And staff recommends that you consider you forward a recommendation to the city council. Do you have any questions about this?
Any questions, or should we open it for public hearing?
I guess I don't fully grasp just the impact that this will have. I wish that I had a better understanding of this. So
Yeah,
fast food
I would
restaurants.
Do
agree.
you, yeah, more or?
Yeah, so currently in the BP zone, everything would have to match within that zone. So any new development would have to match the current structures. And so they're proposing that everything let me go back. Everything on the west side of the river has to have the same architectural theme and design. And then everything on the east side of the river can have a different theme and design, but be consistent.
So just to clarify that, it says each project. So this PD 31 would be consistent with itself. And then if they come in and develop restaurants and things next to 800 North, that also would have to have a theme, but they could be separate themes.
So it doesn't have to be consistent with next
So it doesn't have to be consistent with, so what they're saying is whatever's developed in a site plan would need to be consistent with that elevation. That's what that part is talking about.
That's fine.
So if, this PD, like I said, would match, and then whatever they could develop next to that would match itself and not have to match the residential or the Nexus. And then, or whatever that building is called. If the building comes in now, the office building comes in and wants to do a mirror building, they would have to be consistent with what that building looks like. It doesn't have to be exact, but development would have to be similar to what they have currently. And maybe to address your question, Mr. Hawks, is the other option is to allow, currently we allow restaurants, sit-down restaurants only. This would open it up to drive-throughs. So that's the difference with what they're proposing is that whether it's a McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, any of those national brands could go there, whereas now they could not unless they do it without a drive-through. So there are some Chick-fil-A's that are walk-in only. That's a possibility, but this opens it up for a drive-through.
Does that clarify? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open it for public hearing. So if you would like to speak to opening it up for fast food and drive-throughs and the architectural style, please come forward. 3 minutes, please.
Lynette Kern again. I don't have a big issue with the architectural style. My first question, I guess, is where else in the city is there a BP zone? And because if you change it in the zoning, then it's for everywhere, not just there. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I would want to know that, first of all, and then just the impact of idling cars and the pollution, especially in the winter with the issues we have here. And it would be more traffic on top of what we would have for sure. So those are my biggest concerns with that. And like I said, when we did that, we were very specific about not allowing any of those kinds of restaurants along 800 North, when we had the whole committee that determined those zoning. So that was a big deal to not allow that. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Jason, do you want to speak to the BP?
Just one clarification. So in the Harmon's Shopping Center, that also did not permit that. And they actually came in and requested a drive-through amendment. So the Dairy Queen, for example, does have a drive-through. That was an amendment about 5 years ago. My memory's bad. So it could be longer than that, but that's something that was changed on 8th North as well. So I'm not saying that it's, you need to do it here. I'm just saying that has been something that the council has considered in the past.
Jason, could you address the other BP zones in the city that it would impact opening the drive-throughs up?
But I just wanted to bring up where they had that, Harmon's was already in existence when that committee for the design on 800 North came in. And a lot of the reasons that we were really careful about what we allowed along there is if you expect UDOT to be able to make changes on anything, a lot of what they have to do comes down to their ability to purchase the properties to make the road changes and things. And the more things that you allow, the more costs you put on them when they have to buy properties to move roads or expand roads and stuff. So that was a big part of it too.
Thank you.
So the business park is only in two areas, this area and then the university property. UVU is also zone BP, just because the city at the time just put a zone on it because it's a state facility and they can really pretty much do what they want within that facility. So the BP is just a zone on the university, but it really doesn't apply to what they do. So the only real specific BP zone is this property within the city.
Any comments? Any thoughts? Oh, I can close. Anyone else for the public hearing? I should probably close the public hearing. Anyone else? Okay, then I will close the public hearing. Back to us.
What do you think? Tina, one.
Want to start with Tina?
Keeps them down.
What are you looking?
Oh, I mean, I'll say, I mean, I guess if I hadn't really thought, I bike along 800 all the time to get to the canyon, and I never realized that there weren't any restaurants in 800 that have a drive-through. That just was so I guess I would respect what the prior committee did. And I think it does increase traffic. While we can't influence, we have no control over what UDOT does. We actually have control about the flow of the traffic potentially with this ordinance. So I would love to have a restaurant there, and I don't even mind a fast food restaurant, but one with a drive-through, I think, creates a challenge.
So I spent my career, 35 years, working for a company by the name of Diebold. Diebold invented drive-up banking. And ironically, so I've worked a lot with drive-up systems, and I don't know that it's necessarily true that it creates more pollution. It does provide greater efficiency. People have to pull up and park and back out. So I'm not sure it's just that cut and dried. Who's making the request this change be made? Is that your organization, Jim?
Do you like to address us again?
So yes, we are we're making the request, and again, it was two-part. It was with architectural, what the buildings look like, and it was to allow drive-through. Again, we have not really gotten too deeply involved. I can say we're not planning on on a bunch of drive-through restaurants in that area. We wanted to have some flexibility when we do plan kind of a destination dining restaurant thing, to where you have a couple of sit-down opportunities and maybe something that's quicker and drive-through. But that's kind of our final phase as we do the fun stuff in Orem.
Thank you.
So you're really looking just for some clearance to have some latitude to.
This will help set the rules when we bring in a master planner to work on this. And it's a very, destination dining is a very small niche industry. And so we plan on bringing in somebody that's that's very experienced in doing this and done, has a track record of successful projects elsewhere in the country.
Okay, thank you. For me, this motion is difficult because I think there's the fast food aspect of it and there is the zoning, so it doesn't have to match. And I think my understanding is correct, when the BP was created, it was created in such a way that it was going to be more of a master planned BP. And now that the parcels have been sold off, it's different owners and different things. Is that a correct understanding or?
Jason's probably best to answer that.
You explained it well. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, just want to make sure that's the correct, I was working off the correct understanding. So, and like, as far as I'm concerned, I would move for a positive recommendation for the miscellaneous regulations for manufacturing, no, that's the wrong one, sorry.
For the architectural.
For the architecture standards.
Yeah.
Whereas the fast food one, I think there's more concern about and more either we would.
I mean, I know people that are going up to Sundance and they're going to stop and grab something. And I
Yeah.
think it's really convenient.
Yeah.
I mean, I can make an argument from a business perspective. That makes total sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a way to get in and out and back onto.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there'll be a way to
University.
get up to the ski slopes, but yeah, I see why they want it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, but from a business perspective, it does make sense.
Well, my response would be I would make a recommendation to the city council to discuss it and decide, and for it to go to the city council for them to decide, I guess we have to make a,
50, yeah, positive, negative, or we
yeah.
can vote ourselves into
So-
no option.
So based on that, I mean, go ahead, Tina.
Come on, Tina.
I'll make the recommendation that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council to amend a portion of appendix A of the Orem City Code to amend standard land use code 5811 fast food and make such use permitted in the business park zone, and amend section 22-9-8 parentheses 1 miscellaneous regulations for manufacturing and research and development zones to allow fast food restaurants with a drive-through and to make architectural standards consistent throughout the developmental project areas in the business park zone located at approximately 720 north and 1550 east.
I second that motion.
Okay. Are you ready to vote? Are you still?
Well,
Do you want me to start
I
at the other
approve one,
end?
and the other, if it's
No.
both, then I'm going to say nay.
I think I'll pass.
As in nay or as in?
It's a very undecided.
Very, see, and for me, I would split them. If it were up to me, I would have split these into two different, and maybe that's what we need to discuss. Can we make a motion that they're two separate?
You could make a motion to separate
Separate
them and recommend one aspect and not the other if you'd like, if you think that that would have more success or whatever.
But Aaron,
Get four
would
for an
they
actual
finish their
recommendation.
vote first because they had a second, so they would finish this vote. and then
Yes,
make
you
a
should probably
motion.
finish this vote and then you can craft a new motion if that's what
Okay.
you like.
That's fine.
There must be a reason this was in to begin with. Is there anybody on the city staff that can tell us? There must have been a reason.
Why the two are
Why
together?
was it originally?
I wasn't in the department when this development was created, but Jason may have some history.
You're talking about the restaurant? I would assume it was part of originally it was part of the hotel, convention center, and then office buildings. That was the original proposal. It's probably been 25 plus years ago. One office building was built and the other was not, but part of that would be a destination type where you have a restaurant within that complex and not a standalone. So that the ability to have a restaurant as a permitted use was put in, but not a fast food. Obviously, fast forward 25 years, times have changed, COVID, different things like that. Drive-throughs are now very popular, and I don't think they're going away anytime soon. So that's why the developer is coming in and requesting that change, because it's been a long time and the property sat for a long time. But the original intent is to have more of a restaurant within the complex and not a standalone.
So that would give an option for even a destination restaurant, like in the case of Milagros, where they wanted to drive through to have one.
Just to
Correct.
clarify. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't wanna obviously repeat the history we just had a couple of years, but that we found restaurants were finding ways to make drive-throughs work for them, even though they didn't have one. Chick-fil-A in the mall doesn't have one, but they put one out in the parking lot. So somebody would come up, order in at a tent, and they would bring out the food and deliver it through that. So there were creative ways to make that happen because that's the way we had to do it. And so that's kind of the trend that we see is fast food. Anyway.
Or drive-through more specifically.
Correct, yes.
Okay, okay.
You guys still need to vote and then.
Okay, I'll give it an eye.
I'm gonna aye.
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 Okay, it passes. Fantastic. No. Ha. Item 3.6.
Let me switch. I think I need to exit out. I have way too many things open.
Okay, I think we got it. Going here. Hello, I'm not Rachel, I'm Grant, just so for the record. So I'm here to present item 3.6, which is a public hearing, and we're amending portions of chapter 4, the housing chapter of the Orem general plan, including updating section 4.1, population demographics, section 4.2, existing conditions, and enacting section 4.4.2 pertaining to moderate income housing strategies. And we are the applicant.
Grant, could you hold for a second?
Yeah.
I appreciate everyone in the audience, but if you could go outside to have your conversations, the echo in this room, the sound just comes straight back to us. So thank you. Great acoustics. All right. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you. In the pre-meeting, I gave a brief background, but for timing, if you want me to, would you like me to go through some of the history background again?
Do you think we need to cover it again? Are we good? Unless they win loan. And if you could do it really briefly, just super.
Okay, so this is bringing forward a proposal to amend the general plan to adopt 4 moderate income housing strategies to meet a state legislation that was adopted earlier this year and a deadline of October 1st for Orem City to amend our general plan to formally adopt these 4 selected strategies. And so that is what was before us today. The other amendments are, while we were amending this chapter, we thought it was low-hanging fruit kind of opportunity for us to amend some smaller items pertaining to demographics that relate to the housing data that we will subsequently be presenting more later this next year. And so for the first item, the first section we're amending is section 4.1, population demographics. So you see here, the red text is what we're amending with updated data. One moment while we make sure the slides are shown on the YouTube. Give it a few seconds. Okay, we're back. So as I was saying, this is amending section 4.1, updating the demographics from previous data that was listed and identified in this chapter as 2018 American Community Survey data to the 2020 census data that is available. So we're updating this subsequent chart with that 2020 census data, as well as the identified average annual growth rate percentage that was calculated from the new data. Additionally, there was this figure 4.2 chart with the updated 2020 census data for population by age for Orem and Utah County. This chart we felt was kind of redundant as far as population by age. It does break it down by the county and the nationally and the state. So we'll be subsequently updating this in a later housing study with more housing data. So that's the changes we're making to section 4.1. Section 4.2 we're amending. It's an existing conditions chapter. It talks about existing conditions for housing in the city. Under section 4.2.5, listed the previous State Street mixed use districts. Those have previously been rezoned. So we're just eliminating that section. And this is finally the 4 strategies for the section we're enacting, 4.4.2 moderate income housing strategies. So this is just a summary of those 4 strategies from the state statute for a menu of options that the cities, in this case us, Orem City, can choose to adopt to meet those requirements. And subsequently, also as part of the statute, we have to adopt an implementation plan for that strategy that we select. And so you see here, this is the full text that we're proposing for those strategies and the strategy themselves. So 4.4.2a, we're adopting the strategy accessory apartments, and that E is from the state statute. E, create or allow for and reduce regulations related to internal or detached accessory dwelling units in residential zones. And then I will not read verbatim the text, but as proposed, as presented here, that is the implementation plan we're recommending. It identifies measures that Orem takes to regulate accessory apartments, and how many we have, how many we anticipate every year going forth. The second section, 4.4.2b, is affordable senior housing, and it's menu item X. I will refer to it that way. It's demonstrate implementation of any of the program or strategy to address housing needs of residents in the municipality who earn less than 80% of the area median income, etc. And the subsequent proposed implementation plan of how we regulate those projects that come into the city that meet that zone requirements. Does provide for age restrictions and income restrictions that are monitored annually, and the owners are required to report those. The third strategy is 4.4.2c, housing and transit reinvestment zone. And that's item Q from the state menu. And we've had a developer who owns a piece of property that meets some requirements for this type of zone at the state level. And they've approached the city. So we've recommended this as a strategy to choose, as we can go through that process and further steps to evaluate whether it's feasible or not. But it is allowed to us to select it as a strategy in this form. And finally, the final strategy is 4.4.2D station area plans. And that's item V from the state menu. And so we're required to develop and adopt station area plans for a front runner station and bus rapid transit stations. We're proposing to do this in 2 phases. Phase 1, front runner station, phase 2, bus rapid transit stations. So that concludes the strategies and the amendments we're making. Any questions to this point from the commission members? Great. Next steps, we'll take your recommendation tonight to the city council next week, where they will vote on it so that we can make that amendment before the deadline of October 1st, as well as staff will be submitting a report by October 1st to meet the other half of the statutory requirements.
Thank you.
So finally, we've got a recommendation. Staff recommends Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council of the proposed amendments.
Thank you. It's a public hearing, so I will open it for public hearing, but just if you guys had any questions or anything you wanted to say before I open it for public? Good.
Well, it sounds to me like it's just something that's mandated by the state that we do. We really don't have a lot of options other than, I guess, not do it and then face financial penalties.
Correct. So the legislation that went in place did have some incentives and restrictions for cities that choose to adopt and amend their general plans and file reports, and who don't. Additionally, previous legislation in 2019, the city's already been making progress on a previous menu of similar strategies. Some of the strategies this year were changed with the current legislation, but we previously had adopted up to 7 strategies to address moderate income housing from the previous legislation. So for this purpose, with the new requirements and changes to the menu, we are recommending, just for now, we adopt a minimum of 4 strategies to start. We can kind of then come back and assess that going forward with how we see with working with the state, how things evolve with legislation.
I guess my question would be, are we up to snuff where we need to be in terms of complying with the state's requests of us?
With the 4, yes, and as proposed with stationary plans, yes, we're currently meeting those requirements.
And Grant, maybe share your conversations with the state representative you're working with on what you've shared tonight.
Oh yeah, so previously under the previous legislation, we reported to somebody at the Division of Workforce Services, and he indicated at the time every year that we reported from 2019 to last year, so it's 3 reports, that Orem was kind of leading the way with reports, detailed reports, compliance, and all with our strategies that we had selected. Changes have since happened in the community and the legislation. So I think we've still in close contact with the new representative that is from the Division of Workforce Services to ensure that the strategies we've selected, as well as the wording for our implementation plan, are in line with what they are seeing and expecting.
Great.
And he's already given us that kind of thumbs up. Anything else, Ryan?
That was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will open up this meeting for public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward. Okay, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Would anyone like to?
I move we forward a positive recommendation to the city council to amend portions of chapter 4 housing of the Orem general plan, including updating section 4.1 population demographics, section 4.2 existing conditions, and enacting section 4.4.2 pertaining to moderate income housing strategies.
Second.
Okay, Jim?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, passes. I mean, our recommendation is forwarded.
Thank you.
Okay, Ryan, is there anything?
No, just thank you. It was a healthy discussion tonight and some fun items. Just want to give you a brief update. Application will soon be made by our engineering, our capital projects manager. Wanted to say staff, but he is one person. He will be applying for site plan approval for Heritage Park, which is where the water tank's going in, and Hillcrest Park. Those plans are getting really close, and they'll be coming to you hopefully after Development Review Committee reviews those and makes sure they're in good shape. They'll be coming for site plan approval in probably the next 6 weeks or so.
Neat.
So if you drive by Hillcrest, demolition is started. We don't need site plan approval to start demolition, but about October 17th, the contractor will start taking down this portions of the school that will be removed. But right now, site clearing and grubbing is underway.
Great. Thank you. Okay, minutes. Is there anything else from anyone else? Am I missing something? Okay. Okay, minutes. Have you all had a chance to review the minutes? Okay.
I make a motion, they be approved, the minutes of our meeting of whatever the date was, September 7th.
September 7th.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll second.
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second. So moved.
Come on. Let's go. Aye. Yes.
Aye.
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 I thought it was just majority once we had quorum, right? But I'd have to look at the ordinance to see what it said. I have it in front of me to look at, so. Because I would have thought it would require four.
Portions of chapter 4 housing.
Yeah. I've been there.